how to do it. This is how not to do it. And right in the middle is the proper energy or the proper motive or the proper power or the proper atmosphere or the proper environment in which the gift operates. And that is love. So it ties in. It's part of the more excellent way. Look at verse 31. Having given them all of the basics about how God has put the gifts in the church and how they are to be content and how they are not to feel inadequate and jealous and envious if they don't have a showy gift. And how, on the other hand, if they do, they're not to be proud and selfish and self-seeking and boastful. And he says, instead of accepting what God has given, you are coveting the showy gifts. That's the Greek rendering. It's an indicative, not an imperative. You are continuing to covet the showy gifts. But I show unto you a what? A more excellent way. In other words, a more excellent way than coveting the showy gift is to be content with the one you have. A more excellent way than lording it over somebody because you happen to have the gift of speaking or preaching or teaching or whatever, or languages. A more excellent way than being proud is to be loving. And that's what he talks about in 13 as he describes in beautiful language the more excellent way, which is love. The Corinthian church had the gifts. The Corinthian church had a lot of things going on, had a lot of activity, but without love, it wasn't excellent. It was counterfeit. And they were selfish and self-seeking and operating in the flesh. And so chapter 13 sums up the more excellent way. Not conflict in the body, not struggle, not self-seeking, not pride, not even envy, not even jealousy. None of those things have a place. Only love. Only love. Now really, as you talk about love, you're getting into the very heart of Paul's view of spiritual life. Because love is basic. And we could spend weeks and weeks and weeks just about that subject. But what he's really saying here is this, and I want you to get this because this is the heart of everything. The truly spiritual life is the only life in which spiritual gifts can truly operate. Okay? And the truly spiritual life is not controlled by the gifts of the Spirit, it is controlled by the fruit of the Spirit. Now you have to understand what I'm saying. Let me say it again. Here are the Corinthians with all the gifts and none of the fruit of the Spirit. And what is the fruit of the Spirit? Galatians 5:22. What's the first one? Love, joy, peace, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, self-control. If you don't have the fruit of the Spirit, then the gifts of the Spirit are functioning in the flesh. It's a simple process. The believer walks in the Spirit. The Spirit produces the fruit of the Spirit. Out of the fruit of the Spirit come the gifts of the Spirit operating in the power of the Spirit. And so it is then that if we do not have the fruit of the Spirit manifest, if love isn't manifest, and maybe love is the fruit, and the rest of those words just describe love in its dimensions, love is certainly the greatest according to 13:13, where he says the greatest of these is love. If there's no love there, then what is coming off and what is being done without the fruit of the Spirit. And if it's being done without the fruit of the Spirit, it's being done without the Spirit. It's in the flesh, it's fleshly, it's carnal, it's counterfeit. And so here are the Corinthians. They've got the gifts of the Spirit, and they're doing their thing in the flesh without the fruit of the Spirit. And Paul says, when it all gets done, you got nothing. Let me read you the first 3 verses of 13. Listen. And change the word though to if. An here in the Greek is better translated if, and it reads like this. If I speak with the languages of men and of angels and have not love, I am become a sounding bronze or a tinkling cymbal. And if I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, if I have all faith so that I could remove mountains and have not love, I am nothing. And if I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and if I give my body to be burned and have not love, it profits me what? Nothing. He says all of the gifts of the Spirit and all of the activities mean nothing without the fruit, which is love. Love has to be the driving force. Love has to be the motive. Love has to be the guts of anything in the life of the believer. You see, it's possible to have the gifts of the Spirit. It's not only possible, it's really true that we have the gifts of the Spirit, and it's possible to have the gifts of the Spirit without spirituality. You see, having a spiritual gift doesn't make you spiritual. They can function in your own energy in the flesh as you counterfeit them, or they can function in the power of the Spirit. And without the fruit of the Spirit, it's in the flesh. So here are the Corinthians. They're up there prophesying, and they're up there speaking in languages, and they're out there supposedly healing people, and they're out there doing all their things. The problem is there's no love, which means there's no fruit of the Spirit, which means the Spirit isn't operating, which means the flesh is, which means it's counterfeit. It's a tremendously important thing, I think, for us to understand today, that God doesn't want us doing our own thing in our own power, and I think we know that. But let's see how he unfolds this here. Love is the more excellent way. Now, in talking about the word love, I think we better define it, because our world hasn't got the foggiest idea what the word love means. It's a word that in our age cries out for definition. Now, let me just give you some thoughts. The word, incidentally, in the Greek is agape, which is the most grandiose concept of love. It's the highest level of love. It's the love that is associated with God. And that's the term. And the question is, what does it mean? Well, let me tell you what it doesn't mean. The word love, as it appears in the Word of God, does never mean romantic or sexual love. Now, the Greeks have a word for that, but it isn't this word. And the word that they do have for that never appears in the New Testament. For example, when it says in Ephesians 5, husbands, love your wives, it isn't talking about romance. And yet how many sermons have you heard, or how many books have you read where a guy says, husbands, love your wives, and then gives 4 illustrations about opening the car door for her, or buying her flowers, and feeling the old romance. But that isn't what it's talking about. It isn't talking about the romance and the sex and all of that. There's a different word for that. And another thing, love in the Bible never means emotional love. He's not talking about a tingly sensation. He's not talking about sentimentalism. He's not saying the greatest of these is sentimentality. That too is not scriptural love. And thirdly, the word love as it appears never means a friendly spirit of tolerance and brotherhood toward others, no matter what the convictions are. In other words, it's ecumenical love. The people who say, well, it doesn't matter what anybody believes, as long as there's some common ground, we just gotta love them all. Recently there was a certain prayer meeting, and certain people were there of other than Christian religions and faith, and somebody asked the director of it, who happened to be a Christian, on what basis they got together, and he said, on the basis of love. Well, they don't even believe the truth of the gospel. No, we don't agree on that, but we do agree on prayer. We all pray, and that's our common ground. Even if we don't pray to the same person, I guess. It's okay. But you see, that kind of friendly spirit of tolerance and brotherhood without any thought of conviction or doctrine isn't what the Bible's talking about. It doesn't mean charity. And unfortunately, by virtue of the introduction